Remember walking into your nan's house and encountering those peculiar features that made British homes unmistakably British? Today, we're exploring 30 strange British home features that have completely vanished from modern homes. Did you know Victorian homes featured special cabinets designed specifically to store human hair for making mourning jewellery? Yet, here's the twist. Many of these outdated features actually solved problems we still struggle with today, from energy efficiency to hygiene, in ways that would make contemporary designers jealous. Some were ingenious, some were balmy, but all tell the extraordinary story of how we Brits once lived. Nothing says 1970s. British home quite like thick shag carpet in the bathroom, extending right up to the base of the toilet. This peculiar choice kept your feet warm during chilly morning visits, which seemed brilliant until you consider what that carpet was absorbing. Steam from baths, splashes from the sink, and inevitable misses from male family members created a bacterial paradise. By the 1980s, these carpets had developed that distinctive musty smell that no amount of shake and vac could eliminate. The trend died when people finally understood that bathroom carpets were essentially giant petri dishes growing fascinating new life forms. The 1970s brought us bathroom suites in colours that defied all logic. Avocado green, dusty pink, harvest gold, and that peculiar shade of brown euphemistically called Pampers. These weren't just coloured toilets. Entire bathrooms were colour-coordinated nightmares. The matching toilet, sink, bath, and bidet, if you were posh, created a technicolor experience that could induce vertigo during morning ablutions. Manufacturers like Armitage Shanks and Twyfords produced millions of these suites between 1965 and 1985, convinced they were the height of sophistication. The problem wasn't just aesthetic, these colours showed every watermark, soap scum, and limescale deposit in graphic detail. Pink toilets made everyone look ill, while avocado ones had an unfortunate association with bodily functions we needn't discuss. Estate agents now estimate a coloured bathroom suite can knock £5,000 off a house value. They vanished when white ceramics returned in the 1990s, though demolition crews still uncover perfectly functional Pampers-coloured loos that nobody wants, creating a landfill crisis of unwanted, colourful porcelain. The few remaining examples have achieved ironic cult status on Instagram, where millennials post them with hashtags like "Das bathroom goals," blissfully unaware of the trauma they caused their parents' generation. The Victorian chain-pull toilet represented the height of bathroom sophistication. That satisfying yank, followed by the dramatic cascade of water from on high, made every flush feel ceremonial. Thomas Crapper didn't invent the flush toilet. Sir John Harrington did in 1596. But he did popularise the floating ball cock mechanism. These systems were remarkably reliable. The simple gravity-fed mechanism rarely failed. They disappeared not due to malfunction, but because low-level cisterns were easier to repair and accessible to shorter family members without requiring a stepladder. Every British bathroom featured a white cord hanging from the ceiling with a porcelain or plastic toggle. The satisfying click when pulled, the way it tangled around the shower rail, the panic when the cord snapped leaving you in darkness. All part of the British bathroom experience. These were actually required by electrical regulations, keeping switches away from wet hands in what's called Zone 2 of bathroom electrical safety. Modern regulations still require pull cords or external switches, but traditional porcelain pulls have been replaced by plastic versions lacking that distinctive cold touch on winter mornings. This cast-iron behemoth dominated British country kitchens for generations. Invented in 1922 by blind Swedish Nobel Prize winner Gustaf Dalén, the Aga became quintessentially British. Always on, always warm. It heated homes, dried clothes, warmed plates, and occasionally cooked food if you decoded which oven held which temperature. Aga owners spent more time explaining their cooker than using it. Traditional solid fuel models have largely disappeared, victims of energy costs and environmental consciousness. Modern Aga switch on and off like conventional cookers, defeating the entire philosophy of having a massive iron heat store in your kitchen. Right then, if you're enjoying this nostalgic journey through Britain's bizarre domestic past, do give us a subscribe. We've got loads more peculiar British history coming up. That little window between kitchen and dining room was supposed to make entertaining easier, but mostly meant you heard every word of gossip while washing up. These architectural features peaked in the 1960s and 70s when dinner parties were formal affairs and kitchens were strictly functional spaces. The death of the serving hatch came with open-plan living. Why have a tiny window when you could knock through the entire wall and pretend you enjoy cooking while guests watch your culinary disasters unfold? The proper British larder featured cold stone shelves, mesh-covered windows for ventilation, and that distinctive cool, earthy smell. These weren't mere cupboards, but precisely engineered food preservation systems. Slate or marble shelves stayed naturally cool through thermal mass, ventilation prevented mold while maintaining humidity, and north-side positioning kept temperatures consistently low. Before refrigeration became common in the 1950s, these larders kept meat fresh for up to a week in winter. They vanished when electric fridges became affordable and kitchens transformed into showpieces rather than functional workspaces. This pristine space was kept for special occasions only: Christmas, funerals, and when the vicar visited. The rest of the year it sat empty, accumulating that peculiar unused room smell while the family huddled in the back room watching telly. Furniture was covered in clear plastic that made sitting sound like unwrapping sandwiches. This wasteful tradition died in the 1980s when house prices meant people couldn't afford keeping an entire room as a museum exhibit of their best furniture. These wooden mouldings running around rooms about 18 inches from the ceiling weren't merely decorative, they were functional. You could hang pictures from hooks and wires without damaging horsehair plaster walls, which were often too soft or crumbly for nails. The real genius was rearranging artwork without redecorating. They disappeared when plasterboard made hanging pictures simpler and minimalism decided horizontal lines were cluttering our zen. Now we're stuck with walls full of mismatched holes from the failed gallery wall attempts. That round iron cover in old garden paths. That's where coal merchants tipped hundredweights of coal directly into cellars through chutes. The cellar itself was accessed from inside, often through a door under the stairs. Middle-class families had maids fetch coal throughout the day. Everyone else made dusty journeys themselves. These disappeared after the Clean Air Act of 1956, following the Great Smog of 1952, that killed an estimated 12,000 Londoners. Within a generation, these architectural features became wine cellars or expensive storage for Christmas decorations. These iron implements by front doors were essential when British streets were covered in horse manure and mud. Often decorative with scrollwork and manufacturers' names, they'd be built into steps or mounted on walls. You'd scrape off the worst before entering because trailing farmyard through the house meant a beating with the carpet beater. They disappeared when tarmac roads became universal and doormats more effective, though you still spot them on Georgian and Victorian terraces, serving as architectural jewellery rather than functional fixtures. These tiny transition spaces created airlocks between harsh British weather and hallways. They weren't just about keeping heat in, they were social buffers. Unwanted visitors could be kept waiting while you checked if mother was receiving, and muddy boots removed without flooding the house with cold air. Studies show these double-door systems reduce heat loss by up to 30%. Modern homes have abandoned these practical spaces, opening directly into living areas, which explains why we're constantly cold and delivery drivers see straight into our lives. Here's something fascinating coming up. Did you know Victorian homes had special doors just for coffins? But first, if you're loving these forgotten snippets of British life, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This British institution housed the hot water cylinder where every towel, sheet and pair of pants lived. Constant warmth from immersion heaters, maintaining 60 to 65 degrees Celsius, meant everything stayed toasty and bone dry. Also where cats had kittens, children hid during hide and seek, and Dad's homebrew fermented. Combination boilers, heating water on demand without storage tanks, eliminated airing cupboards, leaving us with cold towels and nowhere sensible to prove bread dough. These elaborate wire systems connected every room to indicator boards in kitchens, where bells rang and numbered flags dropped, showing which room needed attention. Even middle-class homes had them. The bells survived long after domestic service declined post-World War I, becoming curiosities children played with until inevitably snapping ancient copper wires. You still see bell pulls in period homes. Painted over so many times they're immovable. Ghostly reminders of when having help was common as having telephones. The privy or netty at the garden's end required torches and courage for nighttime visits. Freezing in winter, ice genuinely formed in bowls during cold snaps, stifling in summer with spiders establishing civilizations in corners. Toilet paper was newspaper squares threaded on string. Despite discomfort, many claimed they preferred them for privacy and ventilation. They disappeared through slum clearance and modernization programs, though thousands exist as sheds where original Thomas Twyford toilets often remain, housing garden chemicals. These working kitchens handled actual food preparation, separate from main kitchens where food was finished and plated. Even modest homes had them. Small rooms with shallow sinks called slop stones, coppers for boiling water, shelves for pots. Here vegetables were peeled, dishes washed, laundry done. The scullery maid, earning perhaps £20 yearly in 1900, spent entire working lives in these rooms. They vanished when domestic service became unaffordable post-WWs and kitchens transformed into showpieces. These built-in wash boilers, brick encased in sculleries or wash houses with fireboxes underneath, heated water for laundry. Monday was universally washing day. Coppers were lit before dawn, heating 40 gallons for weekly washes. These weren't portable but permanent architectural features like fireplaces. The labour was immense, filling with buckets, maintaining fires, stirring with copper sticks, wringing through mangles. They disappeared when electric twin tubs became affordable in the 1960s, though many were bricked over rather than removed, lurking behind fitted kitchens. Those decorative lace or crocheted covers draped over the backs and arms of every chair and sofa in British homes weren't just your nan being fancy. Antimacassars had a genuinely practical origin, protecting furniture from macassar oil, a Victorian hair pomade made from coconut or palm oil that left ghastly stains on upholstery. By the Edwardian era, every respectable household had sets of these protective doilies, often hand-tatted or crocheted by the lady of the house as evidence of her domestic skills. The weekly ritual of washing and starching antimacassars became a mark of good housekeeping. They evolved into purely decorative items by the 1950s, with elaborate patterns that took months to complete, becoming family heirlooms. The irony is that by then, Brill cream had replaced macassar oil, making them functionally obsolete. They clung on through the 1970s, increasingly yellowed and crispy with age, before vanishing when leather sofas and minimalism declared war on anything frilly. Modern furniture sprays and stain-resistant fabrics accomplished what antimacassars did without making your living room look like it was wearing lingerie. These ornate metal or wooden cabinets completely enclosed radiators, turning eyesores into furniture. Victorian examples featured beautiful cast iron with elaborate fretwork. Theory said they'd hide ugly radiators while allowing heat circulation through convection. Reality showed they reduced heating efficiency by 20 to 30% and became repositories for lost items and dust. Energy consciousness and minimalism killed them, though they're experiencing minor revivals among those prioritizing aesthetics over actual warmth. Those ornate Victorian plaster circles weren't just decorative. Many incorporated functional ventilation. Hidden airways allowed circulation between floors, crucial when coal fires consumed oxygen voraciously. Typical coal fires could consume a room's air hourly, making ventilation essential. Decorative elements cleverly disguised practical purposes. When central heating arrived, vents were sealed, trapping century-old soot deposits. Modern ceiling roses are purely decorative polyurethane foams stuck with adhesive. These brick or concrete structures stored household coal supplies, typically 5 to 10 hundredweight, 250 to 500 kilograms. Heavy wooden or metal lids prompted constant warnings to children about apocryphal accidents. Positioning was strategic, accessible for delivery but distant enough to prevent coal dust blowing through windows. When North Sea gas arrived from 1967 onwards, millions of coal bunkers became bike stores or mysterious locked boxes nobody remembered keys for. These ventilated cupboards mounted on cool exterior walls featured fine mesh or perforated zinc panels, excluding flies while allowing air circulation. Before domestic refrigeration became common in the 1960s, these were essential for keeping meat, dairy, and cooked foods edible. North-facing walls stayed coolest. Many were built into homes rather than being furniture. Slate or marble shelves absorbed heat, keeping contents cool. They disappeared when fridges became affordable, though many remain, painted shut or converted into ordinary cupboards. Many pre-1900 British homes featured doors kept permanently sealed, opened only for removing deceased. These were wider than normal doors, 3 feet versus standard 2 feet 6 inches, accommodating coffins carried horizontally. Found particularly in Yorkshire and Lancashire, superstition held the dead should exit differently than the living to prevent spirits returning. Some Welsh homes featured coffin windows on upper floors. These were removed during 20th century renovations, though you can spot bricked-up doorways with different coloured mortar. The mysterious green baize door was the social dividing line in British homes large enough to have servants' quarters. This padded door, covered in thick green felt, served multiple purposes. It muffled sound between the servants' domain and the family quarters, prevented cooking smells from infiltrating the main house, and created a psychological barrier between the classes living under one roof. The green colour wasn't random, it was thought to be restful on the eyes when moving between the bright family areas and dimmer service areas. The padding provided insulation, crucial when the servants' side was often unheated to save money. These doors swung both ways on special hinges, allowing servants carrying heavy trays to push through with their shoulders. Children were strictly forbidden from going through the green baize door, making it a source of endless fascination and the setting for countless ghost stories. They vanished after World War II when domestic service collapsed and middle-class families began doing their own cooking. Many were removed during conversions to flats, though you occasionally find one painted over, the telltale padding still visible beneath layers of gloss paint, a ghost of Britain's stratified past. These featured actual bells inside, mounted in hallways at exactly wrong heights for comfort. The distinctive British ring, 2 rings, pause, 2 rings, came from electromagnetic hammers striking bells. The GPO owned all phones until 1982. You rented them quarterly. Party lines sharing with neighbours were common until the 1970s, providing entertainment, frustration, and gossip. They disappeared when British Telecom privatised and cordless phones arrived, though millions of homes retain mysterious junction boxes halfway up hall walls. These miniature lifts for food and dishes were common in Georgian and Victorian townhouses where kitchens occupied basements and dining rooms sat above. Hand-operated by rope pulleys with counterweights, they saved countless trips carrying heavy trays up narrow stairs. Children found them irresistible, leading to numerous accidents and probable ghost stories. They vanished when basement kitchens disappeared and domestic service ended. Many remain sealed in walls, occasionally discovered during renovations containing century-old crockery. These wooden rails running horizontally around walls at chair height protected plaster from furniture damage. In dining rooms, they prevented chairs scraping walls when pushed back. Originally practical, they became purely decorative by the Victorian era, often paired with different wallpapers above and below. They disappeared when modern paint became durable enough to withstand knocks, and when open-plan living made formal dining rooms obsolete. Now they're returning as character features in new builds trying to look period. Before Agus, British kitchens featured massive cast iron ranges combining ovens, hot plates, and water heating. These coal-fired monsters required constant attention. Dampers adjusted, flues cleaned, coal fed regularly. The range's temperature depended entirely on the cook's skill at managing fires. Many incorporated warming cupboards, plate racks, and even beds above for servants in cramped London houses. They vanished when gas became available, though many were simply boarded over rather than removed. Restoration programs occasionally discover intact Victorian ranges behind modern kitchen units, complete with original manufacturer's plates from companies like Karen or Coalbrookdale. The traditional British letterbox was engineering perfection. The post office specified exact dimensions, minimum 10 inches wide by 1.5 inches high, to accommodate newspapers and letters. The satisfying clatter of the flap, the draft excluder brush that never excluded drafts, internal cages preventing dogs from shredding bills, all part of the design. They're disappearing because modern composite doors are difficult to cut, and most deliveries are now parcels too large for any sensible slot, making traditional letterboxes rather obsolete. Tiny bedrooms were too small for double beds, but too useful to be called cupboards. Every British home had one, usually over the stairs, with sloping ceilings guaranteeing weekly head injuries. Traditionally, the maid's room in Victorian times, they became storage, then got optimistically listed as third bedrooms by estate agents. Building regulations from 1985 requiring minimum room sizes, 70 square feet, killed traditional box rooms, though estate agents now call them home office or nursery instead. These vanished features reveal how we've evolved as a nation. From practical to preposterous, each solved problems we've either conquered or learned to tolerate. Ironically, many were more sustainable than contemporary alternatives. Larders needed no electricity, vestibules slashed heating bills significantly. Perhaps we should combine their wisdom with today's technology. If you've enjoyed this domestic history journey, subscribe for more peculiar British past. Hit the notification bell for our next video on bizarre British inventions that should have conquered the world. Comment below which features you remember from childhood homes. Bet something sparked memories. Until next time, keep celebrating Britain's wonderfully weird history.